And then my story. My story is a travel story. I do a lot of traveling. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. That's an amazing ego boost. If any of you haven't actually told stories yet, you should get up just for that. Okay, so this is the story of my first kind of trip by myself. I turned 18 on a Saturday, and I had a big party that night, massive big birthday party, as you do when you're 18th, and hungover Sunday, managed to pack that evening, and left on Monday morning. And the important thing to remember is that before that Monday, I couldn't actually legally leave the country by myself, so the first available opportunity, I fled. I got on a plane, I flew to Paris, and I started a trip that was 2.5 months traveling by myself. And it was the best thing I'd ever done, and if any of you have the opportunity to go on a massive trip like that, I would really encourage you to do it. But as kind of, I think, when you go traveling, you don't really want things to go perfectly well. If things go perfectly well, it's going to be boring, you're not going to enjoy it. What you really want is an adventure. You want things to go wrong, and horribly so. But, because that way you have stories to tell, like you do now. So I started off in Paris, and actually I really enjoyed Paris. I really enjoyed being there by myself. I'd never been in a hostel at all. I'd never been out of the country by myself, and wandering around the city was just great fun. But I spent 5 kind of uneventful days in Paris. Very nice, very pleasant. But on the 5th day, as I had planned to, I got a night train to Zurich, which is where everything kind of started to go downhill. I'd never been on a train outside of Ireland, well, Britain, but it's pretty much the same. In Europe, the trains are pretty different to here. Everything's in compartments, and sleeper trains, really if you're going to get a sleeper train, get a sleeper like a bunk, because on a night train, if you can't sleep, it's the most boring existence ever. The train from Paris to Zurich is 8 hours, and I arrived in the carriage, I was the last person there, so I sat down, and I had this guy beside me who looked like the villain from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Across from me there was a guy with a DVD player. He had headphones on, but I could still hear everything in the movie, which is actually really irritating because I couldn't see the movie. So I could hear what was happening, but I couldn't watch it. Guy beside him also had earphones, but they were about as big as his head, and it was just like bass music, like for the entire journey, for 8 hours, while he was asleep, like dum, 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 dum. Oh hell. So I'm squished in the corner beside the door, and I just cannot sleep. 8 hours of just unimaginable boredom, because I'm just too polite to turn the light on and wake everyone up, or to like turn the air conditioning up a little bit because it's really cold. So I'm in this train, and it's just gradually going downhill. And the only saving grace is that there is a cute girl across from, there's me, there's the guy dressed like a Nazi, and then there's the cute girl. So after about 2 hours of just sitting there like going crazy, I start fantasizing about what would happen if it was just me and the girl in the compartment. But sadly, the presence of the Nazi kind of infringed on the dream, so it ended up me battling the Nazi for the girl's affections, like every fantasy. So eventually, over the 8 hours, we lost people from the carriage. All of the people on the far side left, and it was just the 3 of us, myself, the Nazi, and the girl. And at some point, we arrived like very close to the Swiss border, and the girl like wakes up and the Nazi's kind of fallen asleep. So she looks out the window, and she can't really see anything because the light in the compartment, the hallway, is shading the window. So she's like peering out, trying to see. And I'm nice, I'm a gentleman. I close the curtain on my side so she can see. And so in return, she gives me a friendly smile. And I'm immediately hoping that at the next station, the Nazi gets off and it'll just be me and the girl left on the train. And it actually happens. At the next station, he gets up, he stands up, and he goes to leave, but the girl does as well. So as she's leaving, she kind of gives me another friendly smile and says, "Au revoir, monsieur," in a very sexy French accent, and leaves. So the plus side is, of course, I've got the compartment myself, but we're only an hour from Zurich. So I crash for an hour, I stretch out across all the seats, I try to sleep. But we arrive in Zurich, I think about 6 a.m. It's just dawn has just broken. I'm so wrecked, I am so tired, I'm deliriously tired. I arrive in the station, and Zurich station is really, at 6 a.m. in the morning, it's the weirdest place on earth. I will describe Zurich in a series of images. The first is me going downstairs to put my big heavy bag in a locker, and finding 2 armed police officers strip searching 2 teenage boys in the middle of the room. Like, I come back upstairs and I sit, and the only the only available bench outside the only open shop, to watch three junkies on push scooters enter the shop on the scooters, go up to the counter begging for money at the counter. Then, while I'm still sitting there, a man, an employee of the train station in uniform, walks by me sweeping, but raving at the top of his head, like, in German, I don't understand. Not just weird noises. So I'm starting to get really freaked out, and with no sleep, I'm just like, oh my god, I need to get out of here. But I should have mentioned, I don't actually have a hostel booked, and at 6 a.m. in the morning, I can't actually find anywhere that will take me. So, and the tourist information office doesn't open until 8. So I decided I'll just wait in the train station until 8 o'clock, then find a hostel. It'll be fine. So I'm waiting, but I'm going crazy. So I said, okay, I'm just going to leave. I'll come back. My bag's in the locker. It's fine. So I leave. I go outside, and of course I bump into the only other people in Zurich, which is this old man and his kind of, I don't know, maybe 10-year-old daughter. And they have a camera, and they want me to take a photo of them. So fine, yeah, I take the photo, and I hand them the camera back, and they look at the digital camera, they look at the photo, and they kind of look up at me and look back at the photo, and he takes her by the shoulder and walks away, giving me a really horrible look. Don't know why. So at this point, I'm like, oh my god, this is just really weird. So at about 7:30, I find an internet cafe that opens at 7:30 in the morning. And I check train times, and I'm like, okay, the first train to Milan is at 10 o'clock. I get on the first train to Milan. I flee Zurich as soon as I can. But it doesn't really help, because my whole reason for going to Zurich was that I could see the Alps on the way to Milan. I really wanted to go to Milan. Zurich was just an incidental. I said, why not travel to Zurich and see it? But because I'd gotten no sleep on the first train, I fell asleep on the second train. So I missed the Alps the whole way from Zurich to Milan. I woke up for 15 minutes to see mountains go by, but I was so tired that my eyes just kind of drooped and dripped, and slowly but surely I fell asleep. So I woke up in Milan train station to the conductor shaking me awake. I stumble out with my bag, and I'm like, okay, I don't have a hostel again, because I had planned on being in Zurich. So I'm like, okay, I need to find somewhere to stay. I need to sleep. And I wander Milan train station. Milan train station is twice the size of Zurich train station, and it's full of shops. And it's really difficult to find the tourist information office. But I will give you a hint. It's down behind a row of shops and a massive jewelers, and there's no sign for the tourist information office until you go around the corner of the jewelers. When you go in, there's an old woman at a desk. It's a very small desk, and she will try to answer whatever questions you have, despite the fact that she speaks no English. I eventually conveyed to her that I needed somewhere to sleep. I didn't care where, preferably close to the station, because I just needed to go somewhere, and that it was cheap. Those are my two conditions. And I conveyed this, I don't know how, but she rang somewhere up, and she gave me a map and drew a circle, and I was gone. I went out the door. It was 2 blocks away. Perfect. Now, the problem with that is that I didn't realize the train station is in quite a rough area of Milan. It's not a very nice area. And also, because I hadn't been very, exclusive about the hotel I wanted, it was a real dive. It was a 2-star hotel, but one of the stars had fallen off the sign. I went in, and I booked in. I have no memory of that space of time. I don't remember what happened. I just remember dropping my stuff off the bed, falling asleep for an hour, waking up, exploring Milan for 3 or 4 hours, having dinner, and coming back. And when I came back, I was starting to feel fluey, because I hadn't had enough sleep, and I was just exhausted, and I was just like, okay, I need to go to bed, I need to kill all this, I need to just sleep and rest, and I'll be fine tomorrow. So I did. I went to bed at 8 o'clock. And at about 4 in the morning, I wake up, and the flu is really it's hit me, and I feel dreadful. And I'm lying in bed, and I'm like, But, so I'm lying there, and I turn on the light, and I'm like, okay, I can't sleep. I'm going to read a book or something just to take my mind off it. But I should describe the room, actually, that I'm in. The hotel room is really, really small. The kitchen area over there is actually about twice the size of the room I was in. Most of the room was taken up by a bed. I can't remember exactly how wide it was, but I do remember that when I slept, one of my arms had to be outside the bed, and my feet dangled off the bottom. The rest of the room, there was a kind of wardrobe at the end of the bed, and to the left-hand side there was a wash basin and a mirror. And it was really the mirror that caught my attention, because it was slightly crooked. And I despite the fact that I hadn't actually used the wash basin, I was convinced that at some point I must have knocked the mirror, that for some reason that the crookedness of the mirror was my fault. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, in my delirious state, I pull myself out of bed, and I go over, and I'm trying to fix the mirror, and I'm trying to work out how it's attached to the wall, and trying to straighten it. I'm like, nothing works. So I reach around, and I'm trying to work how it's fixed. So I go the whole way around and I reach up on the top of the mirror and there's something up there. So I pick it up, and as soon as I pick it up, I drop it like it's scalding hot. It's a syringe, a used syringe. Now, at this point, it's really important to note that I was quite sheltered up until I was about 17 or 18, and the only place I'd ever seen a syringe was a hospital. The other thing to note is that I actually, to this day, I'm freaked out by needles, like really freaked out by needles. Just the thought of a needle makes my skin kind of crawl. So I was just not happy. And as soon as you find one needle in your room, believe me, you start like thinking, okay, where are the other needles? And the only other place in the room for needles to be is the bed. And you're kind of like, I just slept in that bed. Was I stabbed by a needle? So I'm kind of freaked out and panicking. And then suddenly, over the 5 minutes that this runs through my head, that kind of freaked outness and panic transforms into anger. I'm like, hold on, wait a minute, fuck this. Why is there a syringe in my room? No, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to tell these people. So I pull out my clothes and I storm downstairs and I go up to the manager and I'm like, yeah, there's a syringe in my room, there's a syringe in my room. And of course he stares at me blankly because he doesn't speak English. So I have to basically mime to him that I found a syringe in my room. So I'm like, yeah, syringe in my room? And at first he's kind of like, well, he assumes I'm asking him for a syringe. It's that kind of hotel, I guess. But slowly it dawns, I think it's my anger that gets through to him. It dawns that I found one in my room, and then the colour just drains out of his face, and he follows me up the stairs straight away. And we come into the room, and he comes up and he looks over the window, or the mirror, and he picks up the syringe. He does exactly the same thing as me, but he drops it into the wash basin, so it rattles around in there. And he turns to me and he goes, wait here, as if I'm going to leave all my stuff behind, and runs out the door and down the stairs. And I'm kind of just left there going, well, what now? Where are you going? But he's gone for about 5 minutes, and I reckon, okay, he must have got the police, because I think this is a pretty major event, you know. It's major for me, it must be major for him. So I'm like, okay, he's coming back with the police, there's going to be some horrible like report, and but no, he comes back with a handkerchief to pick up the syringe. So this inspired me with a lot of confidence. He tells me that he will transfer me to another room, and I'm like, yes, I'll get a lovely, nice room. This will be brilliant. I'll get an upgrade. And now he puts me across the hall into an even smaller room without a window. So I don't care. I dump my stuff and I check the room for top to bottom for syringes. So the next morning I come down and I get the only piece of recompense for the horror that has been inflicted upon me. I go down to the desk and I try to buy a bottle of water, just a small little Ballygown, but not Ballygown. And he sees me, he recognises me from the night, and he's like, oh no, it's free. And that was it. That was free water. Thanks,